Hello? Is it going this time? Okay. Hello and welcome to my GT video project. So today, or tonight, I'm going to be making bread from scratch. During quarantine, I got really bored and I made homemade bread for the first time, and it turned out really, really good. So that's what I decided to do my project over. This is kind of a few minutes off. I didn't realize that I'd forgotten to push the record button, so I'd already gotten several things set out, but we're just going to work with it. So, here's my recipe, and whenever you are cooking, the first step, no matter what, always wash your hands. So I'm going to step over here to my sink. It's off camera, but I'm going to step over here to my sink and I'm going to wash my hands. You can hear it going. I'm being good. I'm cleaning my hands, Miss Watts. Don't want people getting sick. So, here, I'm making 2 loaves for my family is celebrating Thanksgiving early with some of my other relatives. So I'm making 2 loaves tomorrow, but it's the same process for both. So here is 625 or 650 grams of flour. This recipe, for whatever reason, calls for weight instead of volume, which I find to be kind of stupid, but I have this. It is a little scale, and it measures in grams. So this is what I've been using to calculate all of my weight for everything. So we're going to need 400 milliliters of water, a packet of instant rise yeast, the flour, 50 grams of sugar, which I have measured out, 5 grams of table salt. So we need to measure out our table salt. So I'm going to turn on the scale. Turn on the scale. We're going to put our bowl here, and to make sure that we get it right, there's a little button on here that zeroes out the scale no matter what amount of weight you have on it. So it is currently sitting at 0 grams, even though this little bowl, which weighs about 210 grams or so, even though that little bowl is sitting on there, it's zeroed out. So now we're going to take our table salt. We're going to pour 5 grams into this little bowl. Okay, we got a little too much there. That's fine. We can just simply, we're making a double batch, so we can go ahead and just pour it into this bowl. Is that 5? That is 5 exactly. That's great. So now I'm going to go ahead and measure out for both of them. So, okay, we're sitting at 0. And we just start sprinkling in our salt. Is that the same amount? I think this bowl weighs a little differently. Yeah, it does. I'm tired, man. My brain is not fully working. Is that enough? A little bit more. We're sitting at 6 grams. Alright, so we have our salt now. I'm going to set those over there together. This recipe calls for 45 grams of unsalted butter at room temperature. So I have my butter, and I have something to cut it with. Please be careful with knives. Just disclaimer, Be careful with knives. So I don't know how much it is, so we're just going to, I'd say probably about a quarter of a stick is what I'm going to guess is 45 grams. So this butter is still a little cold, so I think I'm just going to throw it in the microwave for a second. I did not mean to do that. So we're going to zero out our scale. And we're going to put our butter in. Alright, so we're at 26 grams of butter. So we need a little bit more. I think that's probably enough. 36. Okay, a little bit more still. Oh, we're at 43. So we're going to get, oh, there's a little bit of plastic from the wrapping. So we don't want that in there, obviously. So we're gonna get that out of there. So going to cut off just a little bit more. Plop it in there. 44 and 45. Okay, so that is our first thing of butter. And then now we need our other bowl. So I'm going to place that on there. I'm going to zero out the weight. My phone turned off. Alright, so we're already at 31, so I don't think we need that much more. 40. 48. Okay, so I have a smaller piece that I've cut off. We're going to swap those. We're at 46. Okay, so just a little bit too much. I'm going to cut a little piece off. Still a little much. Now we're at 44, 43, 44. We're still at 46. 45. All right. So, I have a towel, wipe my hands clean. I'm going to pull up our recipe again, just to see what we need to do next. So, our first step is to get 100 milliliters of our water and combine the water with 1 packet of our yeast in a large bowl and stir it up for a few seconds just to get it mixed together. So, we need to get 400 milliliters of water. And you know what? I'm just going to turn the camera. There we go. So, over here, excuse me. Over here we have the milliliter line. So we're going to fill that up to 400. We got that perfect. This one, I'm pretty sure it's good, but I'm just going to check we got a little over. Okay, so pour some out. Still a little over. Baking is a very finicky process. Is that 400 yet? I think this ought to do it. And would you look at that, we're at 400. Okay, so I'm going to turn the camera back around. And so since our yeast needs to rise, we need to make sure that this is at 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So I have a candy thermometer here, and what we're going to do, we're going to take this water and we're going to put it in the microwave. And we're going to heat it up for just a few seconds. Not too long. We don't want to boil it. I'd say probably around 15 just to start off. Again, this is a very, very tricky and finicky process. It has to be perfect, otherwise the yeast will not activate. So, our water is definitely a little warmer now. I'm going to put it right up here next to the camera. We're going to check the temperature, and I don't think this is going to be enough. No, we're only coming in at about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, so we need to heat it up a little bit more. I'd say maybe 20 seconds this time. So we're going to let that heat up. And while that is heating up, it's getting ready, I'm going to pull up my recipe again, and, well, screen shows it as white. Sorry about that. Okay, the water is definitely warmer. I'm going to stick the thermometer into the water. And it is just getting on up there. All right, it is almost 110. I think we're getting close. Oh, we're at about 107. Okay, so just a little bit more. Maybe another 10 seconds. So here, whenever this gets done, we are going to combine it with a packet of yeast and all of our sugar, salt, and butter, and half of our flour. So I thought the video was recording off screen. I measured out 325 grams of our flour. So we have that ready. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. It's getting on up there. 105. Okay, just a little bit more. Is it at 110 yet? That's the big question. Just a little bit longer. I was way off with my judgment on how long it would take, but that happens in baking. It's a process. I'm sticking it in for another 10 seconds or so, and it can be a little bit over 110, but it can't be under or the yeast will not activate. So, our temperature is rising. And we are just past 110. Okay, so this water is perfect. So now I'm going to turn the camera back around. There we go. I'm going to angle it down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here. So we're going to take this bowl and we're going to combine 100 milliliters of this water. So there are 400. And we're going to pour until it gets to the 300 milliliter line, and it looks like we're getting pretty close. A little bit more. I think that should be good. A little bit more. And just another little splash, and we are at the 300 milliliter line. Perfectly. Okay, so now we add in our yeast. Now, the yeast is what makes the bread rise. Yeast is a bacteria. It is heat activated. So when you put it, it smells like bread just on its own. The bacteria does, the yeast. Okay, so that is our whole packet of yeast in there. I'm going to grab a small spoon, and the recipe says we need to stir our yeast and water combination for a few seconds and get it just good and mixed up. So it should be a kind of light tan, sort of cloudy color. Okay, I believe that is good. That's what it has looked like when I've made bread before, so I think we're on the right track. So, I'm going to grab a napkin to set my spoon on. And now we are going to combine our flour. This is 325 grams. So this is half of our flour. We're going to pour this into our bowl, along with our sugar, our salt, and our butter. Butter is a little hard to get out, but there we go. So now, this is pretty much what we need to start the dough. We're now going to add the rest of our water, and we are going to stir this mixture until a sort of pancake consistency, like pancake batter, until a pancake batter consistency forms. We're going to grab a spatula, and we're going to stir this together until it sort of resembles pancake batter. Just going to keep stirring, and these little pieces of butter, they are supposed to be at room temperature, but they were a little cooler than I had realized. That's okay. We're just going to break them up a little bit with our spatula. We're just going to break them up and just continue to mix. And when we knead our dough here in a few minutes, it will all get mixed and blended together evenly anyways. So that's absolutely fine. So I'd say this is about pancake consistency. That's about like a pancake. So we are now going to take the rest of our flour and we are going to add it in, but we are not going to stir this for very long. We're going to stir it until what is called a shaggy dough forms. A shaggy dough is, I've got flour on my shirt. Bob, I'm sorry. So we're going to take this and we're going to mix it together. Now a shaggy dough is, it's very floury on the outside. It has not been kneaded together very well. It is not very consistent. But we're going to take that, and here in just a second we are going to turn it out onto a cutting board, and we're going to knead for several minutes. And at that point this will begin to look much more like bread dough. So just a smooth, even, make sure that everything is mixed together in our bowl. This is a very messy process as well. So be sure to wash your hands frequently, not only for your sake, but for everyone else's. So I'm going to step off real quick and see my hand. I'm going to step off camera real quick, wash my hand again. And now I'm going to grab my cutting board that I have set out. Going to clear a space for it. Now this is a rather large cutting board. We're going to clear a space for it. And now we're going to take just a little bit of flour, not too much, and we're going to lightly dust the top of our cutting board. Just enough so that whatever's on here, it does not stick. So now we're going to take our dough and we're going to turn it out onto our cutting board. And you see how there are still little floury bits just kind of hanging off, and there's still a little bit of flour down in the bowl. That is about how our shaggy dough should look. It is still very floury, not mixed up well, but it's not supposed to be. And then we are about to knead our dough into a much more consistent ball. So that looks good. We're going to set this bowl off to the side. Wipe my hands again. This, you have to clean your hands almost after everything while doing this. So now we're going to turn our dough out onto a well-floured work surface, which we have, and we're going to knead consistently for 7 to 9 minutes. So I'm going to set a timer for myself. So it says 7 to 9 minutes, so I'm going to go with 8 minutes. We're going to start, and then we're just going to start kneading our dough together. Now if little bits of flour get in off of the cutting board, that is absolutely fine. It is only going to improve the consistency of the dough. It will help it stick together much better. I did not flour this work surface enough. As you can probably tell, it is sort of sticking a little bit, but that's all going to work out. Everything is going to be fine. I'm going to wash my hands real quick, and then I'm going to spread a little more flour onto it, and which will help with the consistency and make it much easier to work with. What I also probably should have done is coat my hands themselves in flour, as well as sprinkle a little more down onto our dough. So with my clean hand, I'm going to stop recording, and this will all be edited together later. And after our 8 minutes is up, I'm going to come back.